Hi, everyone. In this module, we're going to be discussing the option of embryo adoption. Sometimes this is called embryo donation as well. So we'll dive into that and what that means today. My name is Lauren Isley. I'm a certified genetic counselor. I have my master's degree in genetic counseling. For the last 10 years or so, I've specialized in assisted reproductive technologies and infertility. So what is embryo adoption? So essentially what happens is excess cryopreserved embryos are donated from an individual or a couple who previously underwent IVF and created embryos. And then they had excess embryos, so they decided to donate them to another recipient who would use them for their reproductive plans. And those donated embryos are then chosen by a specific recipient or an intended parent. And these embryos may have been created with sperm or eggs, either from a heterosexual couple or a person using donor egg or donor sperm or both. So there are a number of different ways in which the creation of those embryos can be achieved. The recipient or the intended parent typically does receive a detailed medical and social history of the biological parents, or sometimes donors, if that was how the embryos were created. And I do want to point out that the term adoption is really a misnomer. So really this idea of embryo adoption is an incorrect term, but it's a term that's used widely in the fertility field. Because based on law, true adoption only refers to the placement of a child with a family after he or she is born. So technically we can't use the word adoption here. However, this is a term that's just been sort of adopted in the fertility medical setting. So why would a carrier consider this option? So IVF, donor eggs, and traditional adoptions, the traditional adoption process, or even other reproductive options, sometimes just are not feasible or are not desired for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's considered if that person has concerns about the costs of IVF, or maybe religious concerns about creating excess embryos that they don't know what they're going to do with. And then sometimes there's this desire for genetic equity if a male partner is involved. And so what that means is if the couple decides that they would rather conceive a child who does not have a biological relationship, technically does not have a genetic relationship to either partner, sometimes that can be pursuing of embryo adoption can help to satisfy those concerns among both members of the couple. Some aspects of embryo adoption to consider. There is varying availability of embryos that feel like a good fit to that family. So maybe that person or that family desires embryos that were created by couples or individuals of a certain ethnic background. And so there may be limitations as to how available embryos, again, of a certain aspect are. There are varying odds of success in terms of conceiving a child using donated embryos. In general, third-party reproduction can carry some psychological complications, and some individuals may struggle with this idea of a non-genetic relationship when embryo adoption is pursued. Another important aspect to consider is that embryo donors tend to have children of their own that they've already conceived using embryos that were created in that same group. And so somebody who is pursuing this option of embryo adoption, if they conceive a child using those embryos, there's a higher chance that there will be at least half, if not full, genetic siblings. And so something to think about is whether the intended parent desires any kind of connection with the child's biological sibling. Financial considerations. So costs of achieving a pregnancy with a donated embryo can range from about $2,500 to $4,000. And that can include some of the fertility workup and some of the medications that may be administered along with an embryo transfer, and then also some of the just general, administrative fees and program fees of obtaining a donated embryo. I do want to point out this is a more affordable option than many forms of fertility treatment, including those that involve IVF and those that involve donor egg. And again, some of the costs that we've already talked about typically involve the procedure of an embryo transfer, potential travel for those procedures, shipping of the embryo, and mental health and legal services. Resolve is a non-for-profit family building organization, and they've actually compiled a list of infertility financing programs and services that help pay for some of these reproductive medical treatments. So I would encourage you to check out their website if this is an option you may be interested in. In terms of next steps, if utilizing a donated embryo sounds like it's a good fit for you, contact your local fertility clinic to arrange a consultation and explore different options for embryo adoption. And then, discuss some of your clinic's recommendations with them in terms of what pathway to go down with looking into a donated embryo. And then, with any fertility treatment and especially third-party reproduction, it's always recommended you meet with a mental health professional to discuss some of the psychosocial aspects of utilizing a donated embryo. Thank you.